Well, again, good morning. I'm Charlie Miner, and I'm here to introduce the candidates for the ASPPPO, that's spelled with 3 P's, and CSA boards this morning. We're here to meet the candidates to fill 3 positions on each board. The ASPPPO positions are currently held by Paul Crunkleton, Charlie Ryan, and Chris Widnell. Paul and Charlie are not seeking re-election. The ASPPPO positions are currently held by, did I say that right? No, I got it wrong. ASPPPO positions are by Paul Crunkleton and Charlie Ryan and Chris. The CSA positions are held by Rob Marsack, Charlie Ryan, and Chris Widnell. Paul and Charlie are not seeking re-election either, so Chris is a candidate for both boards. At this point, I'd also like to thank them all for their service. They've served 3 years. This has been a tough 3 years to serve, and I think we all owe them an appreciation for the work that they put in at those relative boards. It's been a major commitment on their part, and will continue to be for those who are to follow. The ASPPPO board consists of 9 members. All are elected by Seapine's property owners. Each year we elect 3 candidates for a 3-year term. The CSA board consists of 17 members, 9 of which are elected for 3-year terms by the property owners, and the remaining 8 members represent the resort and the commercial entities. We have 4 candidates for both the ASPPPO and CSA boards, and 1 candidate for the ASPPPO board only. I will introduce them in alphabetical order, and since I'm an engineer, I had my wife check the spelling to make sure I get that right. The election process is shown on the screen. Ballots will be mailed to property owners on November 1st, and the ballots must be returned by December 1st. An independent CPA, Elliot Davis, supervises the elections. This year's nominating committees were chaired by Mike Jordan for ASPPPO and included Paul Crunkleton and me. CSA was chaired by Rob Marsack and included Mike Tucker and again me. So that's why I'm here as the moderator today. I was on both. Our candidates are J.R. Richardson, Beverly Searle, Rich Spear, and Chris Widnell for both the ASPPPO and CSA boards, and then Dan Westerbeck, who is running for the ASPPPO board only. Each candidate has been asked to address 2 relatively open-ended questions. Why are you running for the board? And what do you bring to the table for the benefit of Seapine's plantation? They will each have 5 minutes to speak to those questions and any other points they wish to raise. Their comments are being recorded and will be available on our website. Paul Crunkleton is our official timer, and he is determined to keep them on time so that the Mahjong ladies don't get mad at you. And you have a timing. I had to have a surprise for you there, Paul. So, Paul, if you would demonstrate your timing mechanism.
When they reach 30 seconds, I've got this incredibly high-tech thing that says 30. And I'll hold up in front of me like that. And then those that go beyond that, I'll have this equally scientific thing as 0 on the red, which means the Mahjong people will really get it.
We haven't decided what to do after 0, but hopefully we won't have to. So now to the candidates. Again, in alphabetical order, our first is James J.R. Richardson. If I was going to read his resume, I'm afraid I would use up all of his 5 minutes. So in brief, J.R.'s lived here for more than half a century. He is chairman and CEO of Richardson Group, whose holdings include Caligny Plaza, Windmill Harbor, and South Carolina Yacht Club. He learned his trade with Charles Frazier as his mentor, And in addition to his business activities, he devotes a great deal of time to his community. He is chairman of the Hilton Head Island Community Foundation, chairman of the Hilton Head Preparatory School Board, chairman of CPINE's ARB, or Architectural Review Board, and chairman of the local chapter of World Presidents Organization. He also serves on the board of MUSC, Medical University of South Carolina, and the Arts of Spoleto. He is married, has 3 children, and JR?
Well, thank you very much. I think it's the first time in my life having the name of Richardson that I started first on anything. It's always the last person that gets the F or the A or whatever it happens to be. In my case, it might have been the former. Well, most of you have either heard of me or know of me, and because I've been around so long, I was the first lifeguard, I was the first janitor, I was a lot of firsts. I was the first bus driver. When I moved here, we came across to school on a ferry, and that was a unique experience as an 11-year-old, and had a wonderful time growing up here. One of the most unique things is that I met Charles Frazier, and he walked in my dad's grocery store once and said, "I need some help." Lois, my mother, who ended up being his first employee. She kept books, and he was their best customer, and we instantly became great friends. But I was the next closest person to his age here, so he kind of gave me the ability to sail. He gave me opportunities I didn't get, hunting, fishing, those kind of things, so it was great. So, but I have, that's just a little history. I've lived here for over 60 years, and 42 of them have been in Sea Pines, and uniquely, I've lived in a lot of places in Sea Pines. I've lived in Harbortown, I've lived on the beach, I've lived on Heritage Road, I've lived in South Beach. So each kind of a community, each little community within this community have different issues, and so it's fun to be able to have lived in those places and be able to have that unique perspective. And I've been also part of the Sea Pines development since its beginning, certainly since 1970. And I think that I have the ability to make a meaningful difference. As a Sea Pines has been developed, I was Charles's student, and I got to do a lot of first things for him because I was his personal assistant for a long time after I graduated, and then I went into being customer services in the development part of Sea Pines, and then later to all the other communities. I think we here need to polish our little jewel up. I mean, she's 50 years old, and she needs some help, and I have some of those talents, and I'd like to be a part of making that happen. Because I do have a vision of how it should be the one that all look to. Because originally, all development came from here. Charles had the unique vision of saving and blending in with nature, and that's what I do in my developments, and I hope that will help in this endeavor. So she needs a lot of tender, loving care, and that's what I'd like to bring to her in the 21st century, and I'm passionate about it. And I hope that everyone else is passionate about it because I think it benefits us all in doing that. So I'd like to serve here because I think I have the institutional memory and historical knowledge of Sea Pines Plantation, of how things became what they are, and knowing that as time goes on, there are changes that happen that we don't like, but they do happen. Architecture's that way, buildings that way, development is that way, and politics and government are that way. And so it's just something that we have to deal with, whether we like it or not. And I think we can make the best of all those things. I'm an active listener. I get the facts, make decisions based on the information of those facts, and hopefully they're the right decisions. I think one of my skills is building communities, and this is my community that needs rebuilding in a lot of ways, and do it through team environment, and I do my part in that work responsibility, and I enjoy that kind of work. I teach a class at Clemson here on Hilton Head in real estate development and community development, in which I try to instill what Charles taught me, the values of how to develop a good community. And he's the man that started it all. For over 10 years, I've volunteered in Sea Pines from various other jobs, and I have a deep knowledge and desire to share my time with this community, and I want to make a difference. And thank you very much. I didn't get to zero.
Thank you, JR. Our next candidate is Beverly Searle. Beverly is also a CEO, having founded Beverly Searle Signatures as a real estate and rental company. A resident since 2003, Beverly has 2 daughters, both now in college, so we know why she is still working so hard. Still, Beverly finds time to devote to outside community activities. She is president of Greenwood Forest Owners Association and co-chair of the CSA ASPPPO Short-Term Rental Committee. She has worked on the CSA Long-Term Strategic Planning Committee and is active in her church, Hilton Head Heroes, Heritage Classic Foundation, and Hilton Head Christian Academy. Beverly?
My name is Beverly Searle, and I live at 32 Spartina Court, and I also own the home at 17 Hollyberry Lane in Greenwood Forest. I was thinking about the 2 questions that we were asked to answer, the first being, why are you running? And as I sent an email out last week, that was the question that I got back to that. Why are you doing that? With all and everything else that you have going on. And I'm going to answer that in 2 ways. At first, I do believe that I can make a meaningful contribution, and if I didn't, then I certainly shouldn't be here. I've had the opportunity to kind of get started, get my feet wet a little bit in Sea Pines, so to speak. First by working with the great people in Greenwood Forest for the past almost 4 years now. But then also, too, over the last few years, working on the task force first for the short-term rental committee, which evolved into a full-fledged committee of CSA and ASPPPO, and then on the long-range planning committee, working with just, on both committees, really, really great people. If you don't know what great people there are working on your behalf, let me tell you, there really are some really excellent people. However, I would like to see my particular demographic represented more on those boards. And I fit a few different demographics, if you'll kind of follow along with me. I'm first and foremost a full-time resident, primary homeowner here in Sea Pines, having been that since 2003. That doesn't make me different than most of the people in this room, but I believe that I am a little different than many people who are currently serving, or several of you all, in that I came here at an earlier point in my life. When my children were in 3rd and 6th grade, and as Charlie mentioned, they finished up at Hilton Head Christian. Now they are in college, but they were Sea Pines kids, like a lot of other children here are, and what a great, amazing place to grow up. The second part of the demographic that I think I represent is the second homeowner. I do own a second home, and then I operate that home as a vacation rental, so that kind of leads into a whole other aspect. And I believe that it's very important to be a good neighbor on all those fronts. Whatever type of ownership we have, we're all owners here together. Thirdly, as Charlie also mentioned, I'm still a working professional. Not that there's anything wrong with being retired, okay? And I have people who call me all the time to look at property, and they say, we really want to retire to Sea Pines. And I say, I'm with you. I would like to do that too. I aspire to do that someday, and I think that's hugely worthwhile, and I look forward to it. But I am still working and have that viewpoint to bring as well. I guess lastly, I'm the only girl up here. And I really would like to see more women involved in not just the committee process. There are several of those, but ladies, let's step it up and let's run for board positions and be in a position of policy making and forward thinking for the future. So what can I bring to the table? Not to belabor that point, but I believe I can bring really the viewpoints of all of those different areas about which I just spoke. I also think that Anyone who's worked with me in a volunteer capacity or in a professional capacity knows my work ethic and also my commitment and responsibility. Once I have a project, I like to see it through, and I certainly want it done to the best of my ability that can be. I have lots of time left. Paul has not even held up one sign. So I'm going to close with what I'd like to kind of see for the future. Just a little bit off point, but I think hugely important. Seaplanes is a great place to live, work, and to play. And I think we have with a play down, that's easy. The natural beauty and the beaches and all the things that we have ecologically here. We are so fortunate to have the resort and everything that they have done and are doing for our future, and how amazing that we can just enjoy that as residents of the community. The working aspect, wow, there's so many great ways to work here. Remotely, build a business here, finish a business here, sell a business here. The working part is also pretty straightforward, but to live here, to me, that's the magic part of Sea Pines. And I would really like to see us encourage and foster this place as a place not only to retire, not only to come as your nest empties like mine, but to come here earlier, to raise a family here, have your children grow up here, and be a part of this community for not 10 years, but 30 or 40 years. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Beverly. Our next candidate is also a CEO. A 16-year resident of Sea Pines, Rich Spear is the retired chairman and CEO of Spear and Associates, an Atlanta-based financial services firm for over 30 years. They provide consulting services worldwide. He serves on an advisory board of his alma mater, Georgia Tech, in their College of Management. He is also active in our community. He's chairman of the board of the Arts Center of Coastal Carolina and is a member of the Junior Jazz Foundation, so that must keep him young at heart. Rich is married and has 4 children. Rich?
Thank you. I'm going for the Mahjong vote, so I'm going to be very brief. It's a block vote, I understand. I'm an engineer too, so English was not my major subject. I've lived here, as comment was said, since 1998 full time. When my son was born in 2000, that set a priority for me for this community. He's now in the 9th grade at prep, and if he survives, if I don't kill him, he will be graduating from prep in a few years, I hope. In any case, I've been here, as I said, for that period of time. We came here like all of us did by choice. None of us were forced to come to Hilton Head. Well, my son was, but none of us were forced to come to Hilton Head. We came here by choice. The choice for me was the environment, the unique nature that was created with the residential community that existed here, no street lights, which was a massive adjustment from Atlanta. We came here also because of the quality of life that I saw for ourselves. When I look at what's going on here, I think we're at a major crossroads. And in my particular background in strategic planning and working with nonprofits and profit organizations, we're at a critical impasse. We are now having aging homes that are going to be replaced. We have a resort owner that has made major capital investments that have increased all of our property values. We have a massive transformation occurring around us outside of our gates that has a major impact on what's going on here. All of that has a tension and contention with each other in terms of how we set our priorities. And from my perspective, those are critical decisions that will determine what it's like to be here 50 years from now or 25 years from now. It was a decision that the balance between those components, I think, is critical. Whether we are able to do that, I think, remains the challenge. As old homes are replaced, how are we going to deal with the flood? How are we going to deal with the architectural controls? Are we going to end up McMansioned? I happen to live in an old fixer-upper house on the ocean. That was the model for the money pit. Many of you have money pits. You're familiar with the problem. But as those homes are replaced, are we going to get those McMansioned? And how many square feet can you put on? And what should this look like? As our resort development builds out and competes doing it and adds additional amenities, how is that balanced with the lifestyle we have here? As they build a campus outside of our gates, what does that do to us? Not only in terms of traffic, but in terms of the quality of life that we all came here for. And I think in that context, all of this is very important. So I ran because this is where I live, and I think it's important to give back. I've been very fortunate in my life to be able to do a number of different things. And now, as I said, my passions are the Arts Center, the Junior Jazz Foundation, and Sea Pines in terms of what we're doing here. So from my perspective, what I think I bring to the table, why I'm running in my mind is maintaining the balance between what are inherently contentious differences. That is the environment, the replacement of our residential facilities and development of it, and the resort environment we live in. It blesses us with tremendous sources of revenue that offset our homeowner fees, but it also creates all sorts of contentions for resources. We're blessed with a forest preserve that's very unique, and how is that going to be evolved over time? We're blessed to have a very good school located in our midst, and how is that going to evolve over the next several years? And how is what's going to happen as the town moves from a limited service to a full service town, how is that going to impact us as they develop and redevelop Coligny and the areas around us, and how does that change the quality of life? Charles Fraser and the people that founded this struck a balance that attracted all of us. We all had issues with certain things. We all had things that we liked or enjoyed. That's the same issues we're wrestling with today. But I think over the next 3 to 5 years, the decisions that are made will have a tremendous impact on all of us in terms of the quality of life for ourselves, for our families, and those that follow us. And it will impact the decisions of those people, as I did when I first came here in 1970, that said, wow, I'd like to live here when I was 21 years old. And most of you went through that kind of a process in coming here. Well, will the next generation say the same thing? And I think that's an open question. I don't think there's a clear answer to that. And balancing those demands is important. So that's why I'm running. And I want them, all of you that play Mahjong, I would like your votes. Thank you.
You're not allowed to have puns, the block vote. Our next candidate is not a CEO, but he spent his legal career at the top of his specialties. Dan Westerbeck, a Buckeye, Ohio native, a graduate of Ohio State University, University of Cincinnati, began his career as a trial attorney for the IRS in Detroit. He even crossed legal paths with an alleged co-conspirator in the Jimmy Hoffa murder. We're all old enough to understand or remember who that was. He left government and rose to vice president and general tax counsel of the Santa Fe Railroad. In the community, he has served on the board of Sea Pines Country Club and is currently the chair of the committee of Sea Pines Property Owner Association presidents. I know him as a fierce competitor on the tennis court, and I understand that he recently returned from the repair shop with a newly refitted hip. So if I was ever going to beat him, today would be the day, because I won't after that. So at any rate, I expect Dan is fully repaired and ready to go, and is going to attempt to stand for 5 minutes with his brand new hip. Dan?
Late in the field of a sympathy vote. Charlie, good morning. As Charlie said, my background is unique in being a tax litigator, tax lawyer, corporate executive. I am accustomed to dealing with complex, impossible problems. I sued the IRS every year of my life for a living. Who does that, you know? I'm a resident here, nothing else. I rent no jet skis, I sell no homes, I'm a resident, period. As Charlie mentioned, I've chaired the POA President's Committee for the past 4 years. I have a pretty good sense, and know many of you from that, but a pretty good sense of the grassroots of our community and what the neighborhoods are feeling and thinking. The key from my experience is that I've been able to reconcile conflicting and divergent views to reach a consensus and do a deal. The first half of my career was litigation, was fighting. The last half of my career was deal making. And if you tried to deal with New York bankers, investment bankers, lawyers, hostile takeovers, you've got to find some way out of the jungle. Sea Pines is not quite that bad given our covenants and our history, but it's a complex organization, as we all know. So I'm accustomed to dealing with uncertainty, conflict, different views, building a consensus, finding a solution to the problem and making it work. That's why I'm a little different. Let me talk a little bit about something that several have already mentioned, which I'm happy to hear. Why am I seeking this? I ask myself that question. First of all, my wife has allowed it. Frankly, she has opposed it because of the time commitment necessary to do the right kind of job here as a candidate for the ASPPPO board. And I compliment those of you who already serve. It does take a tremendous amount of time. I think we're at a unique crossroads in our community, as JR has referenced, an opportunity for Sea Pines to return to its status as a premier destination. We have pluses and minuses like anything else, or challenges as sometimes they're called. The property owners are now galvanized by the POAs. They're very active. We have 34 of them, and they're growing. And so the residents are being heard. Secondly, the internet has made communications with our non-resident property owners easy. So you can form a consensus. You can educate people and build a consensus. People have referenced the investment the resort is making to go upscale. I think that's appropriate, needs to be protected and encouraged and supported and patronized. I appreciate it. I think they are the brand that brings people to this island. They've made this place, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for that. On the other side, the ownership flip. We now have a predominantly non-resident property owners. 62% of us own homes that don't live down here. And we have a 50-year-old infrastructure and governing documents accordingly, which makes doing things a little more difficult. The key fact in all of this is that most of the dollars for funding the operations here at Sea Pines come from those of you in this audience, the property owners. And any future funding for improvements will also come from you in the audience. So that's the baseline we work from. I think ASPPPO should continue on the path it started of transparency, being proactive on property owner issues, and deal with issues both inside and outside the gates. I'm happy to hear all of the candidates mention outside the gates because I think ASPPPO needs to play a role in that, not just insofar as the campus, but tax reform. The tax code in this state is terrible and discourages second home ownership. Property taxes, income taxes deter retirees from coming here or higher income people. That's something we have to be cognizant of because it does affect our property values. This place is an icon, and we've learned that the state values us. I'm not sure the town and county do as much as they should. We contribute predominantly through the bed and accommodations taxes to town funding, and yet how many of those dollars come back inside the gates to help us with something? Not enough, not much. There are two things the town, I think, could do to help us. One would be to institutionalize the dredging process, the permitting, the applications, the compliance aspect of it, just as they do beach renourishment. That institutional knowledge needs to be preserved and protected so we don't go through the agonies we've had to go through the past 10 years to achieve what we know is an ongoing operation to keep the harbor clear. And tax reform, as I said, sounds esoteric and only tax lawyers like that kind of thing, but it's a mega force and a mega trend that drives people to Florida and Texas and other places. And we need to be aware of it, and we need to make sure our politicians are aware of it. So that's outside the gates in addition to the land management issues and the campus issues, the traffic issues we're faced with. Inside the gates, I think ASPPPO needs to make your lives better on a day-to-day basis. The trash haul project is a perfect example of that. I would like to look for other projects and ultimately achieve what I would call quiet neighborhoods and quiet days here. So much for my time. Thank you very much, Mr. Timekeeper. Good seeing you all here.
When did you have that hip replaced?
The 10th.
10th. Amazing. Our final candidate is Chris Widnell. Chris holds a PhD in biochemistry, born in London, England, and educated at Trinity and Cambridge University. Chris came to the USA in the 1960s, where he continued his education with fellowships at the University of Chicago and Rockefeller University of New York. He has held major academic posts at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine and has received numerous honors and fellowships. In 1998, he became the scientific program director for the American Cancer Society in Atlanta. He's married with 2 children. Chris currently serves on both the ASPPPO board and the CSA board and is seeking re-election to both. I have mentioned the personal commitment this work requires, so Chris is no stranger to the challenge ahead. Chris?
I'm a nominated candidate for the ASPPPO board and a petition candidate for the CSA board, and I think I should probably start by describing how this came about. In the CSA board election 3 years ago, I was the candidate who received the most votes. This year, the CSA nominating committee decided not to put me on the ballot. This resulted in members of the community organizing a petition to nominate me, and I'd like to thank the 79 owners who signed the petition over the course of a single weekend. Two board members in town last weekend were among those who signed, and that indicates that at least the committee's decision did not reflect the unanimous opinion of the CSA board. I'm thus a candidate for both boards, a choice I made because I would prefer to see my candidacy evaluated by the community, a group I consider to be made up of my peers and in whose judgment I have confidence. As a candidate 3 years ago, I argued that my background in the not-for-profit world would bring to the boards a slightly different approach to some aspects of getting things done. The Audubon Newhall Preserve was something that is an example of what I think I was able to do. The idea was to have a field break in the Newhall Preserve so that a fire there would have a minimal impact on the Sea Pines community. Unfortunately, it had been rejected twice by the residents because they felt that the CSA board was dictating to them and not listening. I worked with Tom Hennessy, one of the owners, and we got a series of meetings involving the property owners, the South Carolina Forestry Commission, to discuss the issues, during the course of which time the owners became somewhat more enthusiastic and actually agreed to going ahead. We received a grant from the Forestry Commission to construct the fuel break. It was done last winter, and now it's operating. The result was a desirable project that was finally carried out with the endorsement of a well-informed community. That's how I think many such things should be done in Sea Pines. Sea Pines, as you know, is close to being built out, and the covenants place numerical limitations on the construction of detached single-family homes and townhouses, villas, apartments, and so on. ASPPPO has the job of monitoring this, and I assume that responsibility. Some of the rules have clearly been, shall we say, stretched over the years, something which really didn't matter a few years ago, but could be a potential problem now. It's time to make sure that the covenants are in tune with reality. If they are not, that could lead to major complications, either in rebuilding after a storm, or alternatively, when it comes to redeveloping some of the older structures. We don't want that kind of roadblock in the way. What do we need to do? We need to make sure right now that the foundations are in place for the future evolution of Sea Pines. And we have to avoid the kind of mistakes that were made with Roadmap 2020. It's worth remembering Thomas Edison's remark that vision without execution is hallucination. Among the many challenges, we need to stable and increase funding for improvements and renovation. We've relied very heavily on gate fees, and we should really explore potentially more equitable ways to raise the needed revenue. In the early days, property owners had veto rights on the CSA budget, something they gave up when Sea Pines emerged from the bankruptcy in the mid-'80s. Would it make sense for ASPPPO to resume its earlier role in defining the budget? Perhaps we should explore this. We also want to make sure that traffic outside the gate is conducive to people leaving Sea Pines. If it's harder to get out of Sea Pines than to get out of a prison, then we're not going to be very happy where we live. There are things we need to do with the CSA committees to get more of the members of the board involved. Last year, I think that 2 members of the board carried the brunt of the work, and there were probably roughly half the board who weren't involved in any of the committees. I don't think that the community elects board members for the sole purpose of having them pad their obituaries, but rather to roll up their sleeves and get down to work for the community. With the coffee case apparently settled and the dredging behind us, we can now face the challenge of the transition into a growing community. We're at the point where Winston Churchill said in a different context, "Yes, it's the end of the beginning." I'd like to be part of this transition in Sea Pines, and with your support, I'd be delighted to do so.
Thank you, Chris. CSA and ASPPO, under the leadership of people like Rob Marsack and Charlie Ryan and Mike Jordan, have been through an incredible journey over the past few years. Bob Mang. We've solved some significant financial problems. We've faced some significant leadership and legal problems. The board now faces a transition period, which is significantly different than what we faced in the past. It's certainly punctuated by the enormous investment that the resort is putting into this into this plantation, and is yet to put in additional. There are many opportunities in front of us. We have a long-range strategic plan in process of developing how we're going to, what this plantation is going to look like in the future. And so I am thrilled, really, that we have people with the skills of those people on my right, and the experience and the willingness to tackle those issues. My appreciation to you for being here, my appreciation to the candidates for running. We will have another session at 4 o'clock this afternoon. The 4 o'clock session will be preceded by another candidate, Tom Lennox, who is running for Ward 5 Town Council, a critically important position for us in representing ourselves with the town of Hilton Head. So if you want to come back and listen to Tom Lennox, he will start it off, and then we will repeat basically the same process we had today with the candidates, and I probably will take my tie off. So thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. You've got a big task in front of you, electing the future boards for CSA and ASPPPO. Thank you.